Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Cesar, and today I'm going to be going over this poem called Blood in the KAVA Bowl by EPELI HAU'OFA. Now, who is EPELI HAU'OFA? Well, EPELI HAU'OFA is a well-renowned social anthropologist and novelist who was born on December 7th, 1939, in the former British territory of Papua New Guinea. Mr. HAU'OFA is of Tongan descent. He was born to two Christian missionary parents, and because of that, he grew up cycling between Papua New Guinea, Tonga, and Fiji throughout most of his early life. In fact, he was a Fijian citizen by the time of his death, and I'm sure many of you probably remember an essay of his called Our Sea of Islands that we went over in week 1 of the course. Some other works by him include Mikeo, Inequality and Ambivalence in the Village Society, Tales of the Tikongs, and We Are the Ocean. Now that I have provided you some background information on who Mr. HAU'OFA is and the things that he's done, I will read out loud to you the poem Blood in the KAVA Bowl by EPELI HAU'OFA. In the twilight, we sit drinking kava from the bowl between us. Who we are we know and need not say, for the soul we share came from Vaihi. Across the bowl we nod our understanding of the line that is also our accord, brought by Tongaloa from above, and the professor does not know. He sees the line, but not the cord, for he drinks the kava not tasting its blood. And the kava has risen, my friend. Drink and smile the grace of our fathers at him who says we are oppressed by you, by me. But it's twilight in Vaihi, and his vision is clouded. The kava has risen again, dear friend. Take this cup. Ah yes, that matter of oppression. From Vaihi it begot in us unspoken knowledge of our soul and our bondage. You and I hold the love of that inner mountain, shrouded in mist and spouting ashes spread by the winds from Ono Ilau, Lakemba, and Loma Loma over the soils of our land, shaping those slender kaho kaho and kamile we offer in first fruits to our hau, and the kava trees of Tonga grow well, our foreheads on the royal toes. The hau is healthy, our lands in fine, fat shape for another season. The professor still talks of oppression that we both know, yet he tastes not the blood of the kava, mixed with dry waters that rose to Tongaloa who gave us the cup from which we drink, the soul and the tears of our land. Nor has he heard of our brothers who slayed at Takalawa and fled to Niue, Monono, and Futuna to be caught in Nuvea by the tyrant's son, and brought home under the aegis of the priest of Maui, to decorate the royal congregation and to chew for the king. The kava mixed with blood from their mouths, the mouths of all oppressed Tongans, in expiation to Hikuleo, the inner mountain, with an echo others cannot hear. And the mountain spouts ancestral ashes, spread by the winds from Ono Ilau, Lakemba, and Loma Loma, over the soils of our land, raising fine yams, symbols of our manhood, of the strength of our nation. And first fruits we offer to our hau. The mountain also crushes our people, their blood flowing into the royal ring for the health of the victor and of Tonga. The red waters from the warm springs of Pulotu only you and I can taste, and live in ancient understanding begot by Maui and in Vaihi. The kava has risen, my brother. Drink this cup of the soul and the sweat of our people. And pass me 3 more mushrooms which grew in Mururoa on the shit of the cows Captain Cook brought from the kings of England and France. Now that I've read to you the poem, I'll be going over its central purpose. So I believe that the central purpose of this poem is that of an empowering one. EPELI HAU'OFA is trying to convince the Tongan people that they're not as oppressed, as weak, as frail and insignificant as some people may tell them. Rather, if they look into their history, they'll find that they are and always were a strong, proud, and resilient people, rich in history and rich in culture. Now, going into the poem's literal meaning, I believe that, the speaker may be EPELI HAU'OFA himself. If it's not EPELI HAU'OFA, then it has to be a man of Tongan descent, of Tongan ethnicity, who is very passionate about his ancestral culture, ancestral traditions, and ancestral roots. I believe that the target audience may be people who are genuinely curious about Tongan culture and would like to know more. It may also appeal to people of Tongan descent trying to help identify and get in touch with their ancestral roots. Now, heading over the tone and the poem's form, right, the poem contains 5 stanzas overall. The first 4 are serious in nature and are not meant to be taken lightly. After all, this poem, it's a discussion between 2 friends, during a sunset, talking about their ancestral roots and why it's so important. But however, the last stanza shifts to a more humorous and lighthearted tone when the speaker jokingly curses out the former colonial powers of England and France, when he jokingly tells his friend that he wants to eat mushrooms from the shit of the cows brought from Captain Cook. Now, going into the setting, I believe that this poem takes place in Tonga. It's mentioned in line 1 of the poem that, they're drinking during a twilight period, so maybe, yes, the sunset. And the occasion, hey, it's 2 friends drinking, KAVA, or this alcoholic beverage, from a bowl after a long day. With it being a sunset, one day is ending, the other is beginning. Now, covering some diction, some words that really intrigued me were the Tongan words and the Polynesian vocabulary used. Okay, we have Tongaloa. He is mentioned. He is a supreme, god in both Samoan and Tongan mythology and culture. We have Maui. This demigod appears across all Polynesian cultures, not just Tongan, but also even Hawaiian. He's a demigod who is known for being a bit of a trickster. His forms sometimes range from a young handsome man to an old wise frail-looking man. The term Vaihi means ancestral homeland. That's why I put a picture of Tonga on the bottom right there. Also, alright, for clarification, the man in the top right, that's Tongaloa, and the one on the left, that is Maui. And also another word that kept coming up was hau. This is what the royal orators called the monarch. So going into some artistry, so this excerpt from lines 8 through 9, he sees the line, but not the cord, for he drinks the kava, not tasting its blood. Now, I believe that the cord, is a sign of life, a sign of birth. Right? I believe that it symbolizes an umbilical cord, a cord that connects the Tongan people to their Vaihi, or ancestral homeland. Both the speaker and his friend, I believe they are of Tongan descent. Right? It is something that connects the both of them. Now, when blood is mentioned, it is mentioned that the professor drinks the kava, but does not taste the blood, which means that he lacks that genealogical, that personal connection to the Vaihi, unlike the speaker and his friend. I do not think the professor has any Tongan in his blood. I don't believe that he is of Tongan descent. So when he drinks the kava but does not taste the blood, I believe that, you know, he's kind of like an outsider looking in. He can never truly understand the culture, right, and traditions of Tonga. And going over this other excerpt from the last couple lines of the poem, 57 to 59. Pass me 3 more mushrooms which grew on Mururoa on the shit of the cows Captain Cook brought from the kings of England and France. Now, I believe that these mushrooms are symbolism for, the negative effects of colonialism brought by not only just England and France, but also other foreign powers. It's the long-lasting impacts that still affect people today. And I also find it interesting how the only time now despite being known throughout history as being, these colonizers, these great powers that acquired vast amounts of land, England and France are only mentioned, right, when you have mushrooms growing out of cow feces. Whereas throughout the poem, the Vaihi, or Tonga, it's mentioned alongside legends of gods, legends of warriors, right? Legends of a strong people, despite Tonga being, just an island in the Pacific, technically. But it shows that there's, much more to it. So, in conclusion, I believe that if there's one thing I can tie this poem to something that we've already covered in class, it would have to be the Our Sea of Islands essay, which was also written by EPELI HAU'OFA. Now, in, in this essay, one thing that really stuck out to me was the question of, is the Pacific, islands in the far sea, or is it a sea of islands? Right? This Hau'ofa, he intended for this poem to be empowering. The central message of this poem is meant to be empowering for Tongan people who have been told that, oh, they're oppressed, they're weak, they're insignificant by people such as, that professor character. But however, people like him have a preconceived notion of places such as Tonga and its people, right? Mr. Apeli Hau'ofa, in the poem, he brushes it off as like, oh, ah yes, that oppression, or smile the grace of our fathers at those who tell them that we are oppressed by you, by me. Right? He's trying to debunk this. He's not trying to paint Tongans as victims, but rather as strong and very resilient people who are and always have been that way. So, overall, I personally believe that this is a good poem. I think it's still relevant to readers today because many people out there, much like the professor character, have a rather negative and preconceived notion of places such as Tonga and its people. They assume that they're just little, tiny, insignificant islands in the Pacific with nothing unique to offer. However, right, when one reads between the lines, they'll find the true and empowering nature in this poem. The key central message that Apeli Hau'ofa is trying to communicate to the readers through his use of words and his sense of humor. Thank you very much for listening. Mahalo, and feel free to provide me some feedback. Thank you.